In October 2017, I developed a tingling sensation in my stomach. At first, I thought it was just a temporary discomfort and tried to deal with it myself. I went to the pharmacy and bought antacids. For the first few days, the medication seemed to have some effect, but my symptoms quickly worsened. I started to feel nauseous and my appetite disappeared. Over the next few days, I felt weaker and weaker because I hadn't eaten properly for almost a week. One night, my breathing also started to become difficult, which made me very worried. My husband realized that the situation was very serious and immediately took me to the emergency room. When we arrived at the hospital, I felt my breathing was becoming more and more difficult, which was very frightening to me. I could no longer walk, and I felt like I didn't have enough oxygen in my lungs anymore. In this situation, my husband immediately sought the help of the medical staff. A nurse saw my condition and she very quickly found a wheelchair for me. The nurse put me in the wheelchair and pushed me toward the emergency room. I remember what it was like. I felt a great heaviness in my chest. I tried to breathe deeply, but it didn't feel like oxygen was getting into my lungs. I was immediately placed in a bed. The doctors diagnosed and treated my symptoms. They gave me some oxygen to relieve my breathing difficulties and then performed a series of tests. Many doctors and nurses surrounded me. They put in me. I felt my heartbeat become abnormally fast. My body gradually lost its strength and began to become cold. My vision began to become blurred and the sounds around me faded away. I felt like I was pinned to the bed, unable to move. Suddenly, I felt my soul begin to leave my body, as if an invisible force was pulling me upward. I was being drawn by a powerful force, and I no longer had control over my body. I began to float upward, as if I were floating alone in the dark night sky. In this unknown realm, everything became very peaceful and beautiful. I was surrounded by a very soft light, and this light made me feel very warm. All my worries and pains disappeared here. In this space, I felt that I was not alone and that a mysterious force was guiding and protecting me. Suddenly, I appeared in a room made of stone walls, where the atmosphere was somewhat ancient and mysterious. The room looked like the great hall of a medieval castle. In the center of the room was a long wooden table. There were 3 white plates on the table, one on either side of the table. One was at the end of the table, which looked very striking. The table was decorated with cutlery and goblets that looked exquisite. I noticed 2 rather large bowls in the center of the table, containing some plants I had never seen before. They were very brightly colored and had some strange patterns on their green leaves. I couldn't identify their species, but I could smell a fresh fragrance. I felt very confused and wondered what this place was. Why am I here? There was no one in the room but me. Suddenly, a man appeared in front of me. I was very surprised by his appearance, because the man was Jesus. He was wearing a white robe and holding a golden cross in his hand. I could clearly see his beard and every hair on his head. Jesus' hair was flowing slightly. His beard was neatly trimmed and revealed an air of determination. His eyes were deep and kind, as if they could see into my heart. He smiled at me like a father would do with his own child. His presence brought me an unparalleled peace and tranquility. I asked him, "Why am I here? What is this place?" Jesus smiled and replied, "This is heaven, the home of your soul." I asked Jesus in great confusion, "Am I already dead?" "No, you are not dead, your body is fighting against disease, only your soul has come here." Jesus answered, Jesus went on to tell me not to be afraid. He invited me to sit down next to him. I felt very nervous because I didn't know what was happening or what Jesus would say. He gently patted my hand. His palm was warm and firm, giving me a feeling of reassurance. I gazed into Jesus' face and felt the care and love in his gaze. In his presence, I felt my heart was released and all my pain and worries disappeared. Jesus said to me that he also had a gift for me. His finger pointed to a door nearby. The door was wooden and looked very heavy and old. Slowly, the door opened. My father stepped out of the door. My father died of a heart attack in the year 2008. When I saw him, I was shocked. He looked very young. He wore a simple white robe and no shoes, but his feet were very clean. His smile was warm and kind, as if it took me back to my childhood. He came toward me and hugged me tightly, and I could feel his warmth and love. He told me that he had been watching over me, which was a great comfort to me. Jesus looked at us with a smile and then said to me, "Do you want to try the food here?" I nodded my head. Jesus then picked up a goblet and poured a glass of clear water. I took the goblet and I smelled the water inside. I smelled a fresh odor. As I drank the water, I felt my soul was purified and nourished. I looked closely at the food on the plate and noticed that it was a plant I had never seen before. Its leaves were a dark green color and looked very fresh. When I put it in my mouth, I felt a wonderful taste. It had a light aroma. Its taste was also very unique, with a very sweet taste. I think it was more like a fruit. This food made me feel very satisfied. During this time, my father and I also talked about something from my childhood. My father used to love fishing and he would often take me with him. One time, I went fishing with my father on the beach. At that time, I was only 6 years old, and I was curious about everything. When I bent down to pick up a big shell, my hand got caught in a crab. I started to cry. My father took a pair of scissors out of the fishing tackle box and told me to put my hand over. I was scared and my father told me not to worry. He cut off the crab's claws so I could escape from its trap. Now that I think about it, it was quite funny. Then my father asked me if I wanted to go see where he lives now. I nodded my head. My father took me to a beautiful garden. There were flowers and green trees. I felt very happy, as if all my worries and cares had been blown away. Then, we came to a magnificent palace. It seemed to be built with the most precious materials and the most advanced technology. I was in awe, never having seen such a magnificent building. My father told me that this was where he lived now. Inside the palace there were countless rooms and halls, each beautifully decorated to make people feel incredibly comfortable and warm. When I entered his room, I saw a room full of personal characteristics. There were some of his favorite paintings and photos hanging on the wall, and some ornaments and souvenirs were scattered all over the room. The furniture in the room was made of wood and looked very sophisticated. There was a picture of him and my mother hanging on the bed, which looked very cozy. There was also a bookcase in the room, with many books on history and culture. The whole room looked very neat and cozy. I could feel my father's love for this room. I went to the balcony of the room and I saw many angels in the garden and the square. They were laughing and singing, making people feel happy and joyful. I was very surprised. I never thought heaven would be so beautiful. My father told me that there is no pain and no worries here, only love and peace. Here, everyone can find his or her own joy and happiness. I sat on the balcony with my father for a while. My father told me that although he had left the earth, he would be by my side in another way. Whenever I feel lonely or helpless, I just need to close my eyes, and he will be by my side. His words made me feel warm and comforted, and I knew he would always be there for me to rely on. Suddenly, my soul began to tremble slightly. I knew I had to say goodbye to my father. I turned around and hugged him tightly. I slowly let go of him and he gently patted my shoulder. I told him that I would always remember his love and his teachings. My father smiled and nodded. His eyes filled with love. When I woke up, my consciousness was still a little fuzzy. I had some kind of strange mask on my face and an 4-needle in my body. These strange things made me feel a little sick. My family told me that my kidneys and lungs had begun to fail. If I arrived at the hospital any later, I was afraid I would not survive. I was shocked to hear this news, but at the same time I felt incredibly grateful and lucky. When I told my husband about it, he didn't express any opinion. When the doctor came to my bedside, I couldn't resist telling him about my experience. However, my husband did not agree. He reminded me that I couldn't talk about it anymore, or I would be sent to a psychiatric hospital. Hearing these words, I felt very disappointed and frustrated. I felt that everything I had experienced was real. Now it was considered a manifestation of mental illness, which made me feel very aggravated. I know my husband was concerned, but his words made me feel so helpless. After this incident, my life has become very peaceful. I used to have a lot of anxiety and worry, but those feelings seem to have disappeared. I can feel a sense of inner peace and tranquility. This is a feeling I have never felt before in my life. I used to have the habit of smoking, but since that experience, my desire for nicotine has also disappeared. It was as if I had never smoked before. It's a wonderful change, and I can't imagine myself being able to successfully quit smoking. I am now aware of the importance of life and not wasting my time with something stupid. I try to keep my inner peace and clarity because I know how precious and important this feeling is. This experience has changed the trajectory of my life and made me more mature and stronger. I will keep going to church now, and I am eager to learn more about Christianity. I share my experience with other believers. This experience has also made me more concerned about those who are in distress. I try to bring them some warmth and hope through my story. I believe this is what God wants me to do. This experience made me feel the presence and love of God. I believe this experience is unique, and I hope more people can feel God's love. 15 years ago, I experienced something that I will never forget. Every time I recall this experience, it is so real. There was a time when I doubted whether God was real. After experiencing this event, I changed my mind. In heaven, I saw God. I also saw my mother, who gave me great comfort and warmth. I felt God's and my mother's love, and the feeling was so strong. All of this made me a better person. At that time, I dated a boyfriend. From the first time I saw him, I knew he was the one for me. I loved his tenderness and romance, which made me feel so happy and content. Because of work, we hadn't seen each other for half a month. When he called to tell me he would be back today, I felt very happy. I planned to drive to pick him up. I imagined the moment of our reunion, and my heart was filled with excitement and anticipation. I went home, changed my clothes, and got ready to pick up my boyfriend. I called him to tell him I was on my way. I was driving down the road while listening to music. Suddenly, I saw a car in front of me changing lanes frequently. I subconsciously slammed on my brakes. Because I was going so fast, I hit the vehicle coming from the opposite direction. I felt like I was in a washing machine and was spinning like crazy. Next, my memory became blurry. It seemed like someone was yelling and someone else was slapping me. I also heard the sound of police cars and ambulances. I was really scared and afraid that I would lose my family. Suddenly, I appeared in a black void. I couldn't see anything and I couldn't hear anything. This scared me a lot because I didn't know where this was or how long it would last. I started moving around trying to find an exit. I groped around in the darkness, not finding any way out. I felt increasingly desperate, and I began to suspect that this was just a dream. I gave up my search and stayed quietly where I was. I thought this dream would go away after a while, but it didn't. It felt so real here. I began to cry. My heart became heavier, and I wondered how long I would have to stay here. I didn't know how long had passed and I started to miss my family. Finally, with grief and panic, I cried out to God for help. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in front of me. A warmth surrounded me, and it was as if I was in a whole new world. The figure of a woman appeared before me, wearing a white robe and hair as bright as golden sunlight. As she approached me, I realized that she was my deceased mother. For as long as I can remember, my mother and I have always been estranged from each other, and her suicide has always been something I could not let go of. But in this moment, I felt her love for me, and it was an unconditional love. She hugged me gently and told me she was always there for me, always watching over me. I was so surprised when I saw her here. Although I was not a Christian at that time, I knew that if you kill yourself, you will be left in hell. I was very surprised by her answer. She told me that God gives every soul a chance to go to heaven, even if the person is a sinner. Those who are in hell also get one chance to enter heaven. Now I know that my mother was given this opportunity. My mother told me that God is here for us and that He will accept us no matter who we are. Everyone on earth makes mistakes, but that doesn't mean they can't be loved by God. Curiously, I asked my mother what hell was like. She replied, "It is an indescribable pain and fear. There, every hurtful word spoken and every sinful act is magnified thousands of times. You will be trapped in endless darkness and loneliness." Suddenly, a darkness appeared before my eyes. I realized I had come to hell. I saw souls who were suffering. I had made many irresponsible statements that hurt the feelings of many people and may have even affected their lives. After my mother committed suicide, I cursed my mother constantly. I swore I would never forgive her, and I hope she burns in hell forever. I experienced the loneliness of having no faith. A world without anything. When I saw the things I had done, my sins were mercilessly magnified here. My mind is no longer clear, and my soul is consumed with pain and grief. There is no warmth or comfort in this place, only eternal pain and loneliness. I regret my actions so much and long for forgiveness. Immediately after I left hell, my mother embraced me. She reassured me that everything would be all right. I asked my mother, "Why did you choose to leave us?" She looked at me, with tears in her eyes, and apologized to me. She explained, she had been experiencing pain, but she didn't know how to get rid of it. Seeing my mother crying, I knew it was time to forgive her. After hearing her apology, my hatred for her disappeared. I whispered, "I forgive you." When I finished saying this, I appeared in a beautiful place. I saw flowers of all colors. The warm breeze blew against my cheeks and made me feel incredibly comfortable. I smelled the fragrance of flowers and the fresh air. There was a tall crystal castle in the distance, which was enveloped in a dazzling light. I asked myself in my mind, is this heaven? Around the castle, there were many people strolling around, and they looked very happy and content. Their expressions were all full of joy, and their interactions with each other were full of friendliness. Everything here is so harmonious. My soul was healed and purified in this place. It was so beautiful and peaceful, and it made me feel truly happy and content. Suddenly, I heard someone call my name behind me. I turned around and saw a man. As he approached me, I noticed that his hair was curly brown and very distinctive. He was wearing a long white robe with a golden pattern on it. I knew that he was Jesus. He looked at me with a smile. I felt his love, and the feeling was so strong. He told me that he was always there for me. Hearing these words, I began to understand that his love was real. Jesus also told me that this place is heaven. Here, there is no pain or suffering, only eternal happiness. Jesus reminded me that even though this is my home, I cannot stay here now. I must return to earth to fulfill my mission. He told me not to worry because he had everything planned for me. Then, he showed me a beautiful scene. I saw myself wearing a beautiful white wedding dress with a happy smile on my face. I was holding hands with a man and walking down the aisle together, surrounded by the blessings of family and friends. I felt my happiness and contentment, and it seemed like the whole world was cheering for me. Unfortunately, I didn't get a good look at the man's face. I'm not sure if it was my current boyfriend. Then the scene came back to a hospital where I was lying in a hospital bed. A female nurse placed a baby into my arms. I held her tightly and felt her softness. She had an innocent smile on her face, long eyelashes, and tiny pink hands. Jesus told me that this little angel was his gift to me and that she would bring me endless love and happiness. Then the scene shifted again to a beautiful park. I saw myself running with a girl. We both had smiles on our faces. We felt freedom and joy. I knew that these were the happy lives Jesus had planned for me. I was full of hope and confidence in my future. Jesus told me, "We will meet again." I knew I had to leave here and return to earth. I said goodbye to Jesus, and he gently held my hand. He told me that he would always be by my side, protecting and guiding me to true happiness. Before I left, I wanted to enjoy the beauty of heaven again. The endless meadow and the garden with flowers in full bloom could not be seen. The birds in the trees were singing. I feel endless peace and tranquility. I knew that this feeling would always be with me when I faced challenges, giving me strength and courage. As I left heaven, a powerful force lifted me away from this wonderful scene. Although I am no longer in heaven, I will never forget what I experienced there. When I woke up from my coma, my head still felt like it had some pain in it. I tried to sit up, but my body was very weak. I noticed that I was in a white room, surrounded by medical equipment and monitors. I felt someone holding my hand, and I turned my head to see my boyfriend. His eyes were full of concern and worry. I asked him what had happened, and he told me I had been in a coma for a week. I had been seriously injured in a car accident and needed surgery. He also told me that the surgery was very successful and that I was now recovering. My heart was a little heavy, and I couldn't believe I had been in a coma for a week. My boyfriend assured me that he would always be there for me and help me recover as soon as possible. I felt so warm inside, and I knew I was not alone. He told me all about what the doctors and nurses had done for me. He told me that when I was admitted to the operating room, he felt so worried and upset. He had been waiting to hear from the doctors and wanted to hear good news. I felt so relieved, and I expressed my gratitude to my boyfriend. I am so lucky to have someone like him by my side. He has given me a lot of strength and courage. Also, I am very thankful to God that He has brought me back to my family. When I was with my boyfriend, I didn't believe in the existence of God, and I didn't even have much interest in religion or faith. However, when I went through this, my faith began to change. I realized that life is so fragile and needs some kind of higher power to protect and guide it. I felt a wonderful connection with God in my life. He gave me the strength and hope to move on with my life. My boyfriend and I went through many setbacks and difficulties together, but we never lost our faith and hope. We got married in a church. Our married life was full of happiness and blessings, and God brought us endless grace and blessings. We soon welcomed our first child, a beautiful girl. This made me feel very happy and content because I now had my own family and the love of my life. Every time I see my daughter playing happily in the sunshine, I know it is God's blessing and grace to me. My faith has enabled me to see the true meaning of life and made me more grateful and in awe of God's existence. I believe that God has always protected me and my family so that we can live a happier and more fulfilling life in this world.